At the end of every year, traditionally, often, I like to build the fastest computer that you can possibly build, and that's what we're doing today, featuring the 9800 X3D CPU from AMD and the RTX 4090 from NVIDIA, which is still the fastest card for now. And what's extra especially nice about this build is that thanks to the generous support of Corsair and ASUS, it's going to be a giveaway as well. So we're going to build the fastest computer ever. We're going to set it up for giveaway, and this is to help support our Extra Life charity event that's going to be going on about a week from today, Saturday, December 14th. If you'd like to stop by to say hi to Kyle and I, we'll be streaming for about 8 hours or so. I'll be streaming live on my channel, and we'll also be having a bunch of additional giveaway prizes along with this, this is probably going to be the best prize though, I will have to say. Anyway though, we will once again be streaming on the Extra Life platform to raise money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So if you'd like to donate or enter the giveaway, then definitely join us when we kick that off next week. I would like to say once again a thank you to Corsair and ASUS for their support with this build, and let's take a closer look at the parts.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise, tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way.
What a glorious selection of parts we have here. Corsair's in the middle, ASUS on either side. Let's start off with Corsair. We have a selection of their newest fans. These are the LX120 RGB fans. We have both 120 and 140 millimeter size fans, and we have some that are reverse airflow, because reverse airflow is all the rage now, to make sure that your fans are blowing air the right direction without displaying their hideous backside to you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, those are reverse rotor performance. And unlike the previous video where I totally didn't realize that I had reverse airflow fans, I'm going to keep that in mind so that I don't have to do like a follow-up where I say, here's where I fixed the airflow on the fans. Our case is tucked back in there. That's the 6500X from Corsair. It's available in black and white, and they also have some wood panel finishes on that case. I wanted to get one of the wood panel ones because they look really nice, but those are actually really hard to come by right now, even for Corsair. So we have the standard black version, and this is going to be a black theme case, which I think in terms of aesthetics is going to be like the most widely appreciable by most people. White builds are cool too, and actually most of these components are available in white, but that's a bit of a matter of preference. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Our power supply is the RM1000X. This is the ARMX Shift series, which means it has PCIe 5.0 support with a 12VH power connector. It also has the modular connectors on the side. This has been out for a while. I've actually not built with one of these side connector modular power supplies though, so that should be nice. It provides a lot easier access to plug in your cables. And rounding things out with storage, we have the MP700 Pro, which is a PCIe 5.0 SSD. Of course, we got the 4TB model here, so plenty of room for an operating system and plenty of games. And man, look at the speeds on this thing. 11,800 megabytes per second writes, 12,400 megabytes per second reads, up to 1.7 million IOPS on a single drive. That's quite nice, quite competitive. We also have the Dominator Titanium specifically, so I mean, even faster than Platinum. This is one of the kits with AMD Expo settings, and the speeds and feeds are pretty tiny down here, but it's a 64 gig kit, not 32. We got two 32 gig sticks, 6,000 mega transfers per second speed, and CL30 timings. That's like the holy grail of like memory specs for an AMD build right now. So, and then on the sides we have our ASUS products as well, which is the motherboard, the graphics card, and the all-in-one liquid cooler. And speaking of an all-in-one liquid cooler, that's right here next to our CPU. That's the 9800 X3D. These are also very difficult to come by right now. I actually purchased this one on launch day within the first 5 minutes before they sold out. And I need to find another one because I want another one of these for benchmarking. But there you go, full retail packaging, not a sample. And that is going to be cooled, actually like kind of overkill cooled by this ROG Ryujin 360 all-in-one liquid cooler. It's 320 millimeter fans, and it's got this cool like pump block combo unit that also has an LCD on it. 6-year warranty, 3.5-inch LCD. And I must give a shout out to Joe for actually picking up that all-in-one liquid cooler. That was one of the last components to get for this build. We were kind of short on time getting stuff, so the 6500X case and our AIO, Joe picked up at Micro Center. Thank you, Joe, for doing that and making sure we could get this build put together on time. Rounding things out with our motherboard, one of the new X870E chipset motherboards. It still has the dual chipset for maximum I/O, and ASUS, of course, has overbuilt this board as well. The ROG Strix X870E /E gaming Wi-Fi. This board has a lot going on for it. Along with Wi-Fi 7 support, you also have support for 5 M.2s. 3 of them can be PCIe 5.0 and 2 of them are Gen 4. And we have like max I/O as well, with just tons and tons of USB ports, 5 gigabit LAN, and 40 gigabit, up to 40 gigabit USB Type-C ports as well. And an HDMI, you know, it's convenient. Chances are our lucky winner will use the HDMI out on this much more frequently. This is our graphics card, ROG Strix Gaming RTX 4090. Apart from some Halo models, this is one of the fastest RTX 4090s that ASUS makes. Totally overbuilt once again with a massive 4-slot cooler, and I mean the 4090's been out for a couple years now, but it's still at the top of its game. So this is gonna be like a last send-off with an epic build and with a 4090 before the RTX 50 series launches, presumably in January, or at least gets announced at CES. And that is the traditional rundown of the epic parts list for this epic PC build, so let's put it all together. With any build, it's a good idea to take a look at the case. And I haven't actually built in this case before, the 6500X from Corsair, but I have built in the 2500, which is the kind of the baby brother of this one. We seem to have some panels out here that I'm sure, it's got a hinge back here. It must fold out somehow. Oh, it's down here. That's what, aha, figured it out. It pulls from down here at the bottom to open up our tempered glass side panel. And that gives us a nice look at our interior, which is very spacious. That's the nice thing about using a larger case. Full-size ATX motherboard support here, but we also have room for our 360 rad, which I think I'm gonna stay with keeping that up on top. And then we've got fan mounting points on the side over here, as well as on the bottom. So we need to allocate our fans, and we have 2 sets of reverse flow fans, but this is a 2-pack for the 140s and a 3-pack for the 120s. I have realized, unfortunately, if we want our fans to be matchy-matchy and use the reverse airflow, the bottom here is really the only place where we're gonna do like intake 140s, because we can do 3 140s in the bottom, we can do 3 140s in the top, we can do 3 120s on the side, and then the back here can do a 120 or a 140. So I think to have our fans match on the bottom, we'll want to use this 3-pack of reverse airflow, because that's definitely going to be an intake. Side could be an intake or could be an exhaust, but since we only have 2 140s for reverse airflow and 2 140s for standard airflow, I don't want to have like 2 facing one way and 1 facing the other. So I think we'll do our other standard RGB 120s there, and then we'll do a 140 standard for exhaust here at the back, and our 360 rad across the top will also be pulling air up and out, and we'll use the fans that come with that for that. All right, we got our fan configuration figured out. Other than that, this case comes with our motherboard standoffs pre-installed, so we don't need to worry about that. And there's a big area back behind the motherboard tray here where we're gonna install our power supply. You also notice these cutouts here because this case is compatible with back-to-front motherboards, the reverse motherboard connector options that are out there. Our current motherboard is not one of those, but it exists here for anyone who wants to build one of those clean, hide all the cables builds. This is a beefy motherboard, especially when all the parts are installed. So we have the CPU installed now, pretty standard AM5 installation. Make sure those notches are lined up properly. And then we also have the mounting for the all-in-one liquid cooler installed on there as well. ASUS Ryujin 3 comes with a couple brackets that you install that the actual cooler will be mounted to. It also comes with some plastic covers for the 360mm radiator itself. Radiators can pretty easily have their fins bent in shipping or before they actually get installed into a system. So that's gonna help keep them protected. And I hear you can actually pop those on if you have like an open test bed or something to help keep dust out of the fins of your radiator while it's not in use. But of course you wanna remove those before you install the radiator into the case and before you actually use the system as well. Because this motherboard has 5 M.2 slots, we wanted to make sure we use the one that's gonna give us the most performance out of our actual PCI Express Gen 5 SSD. The 3 top M.2 mounting points here are for PCI Express Gen 5's drives, which is why they actually have beefy cooling on them with some heat sinks and actually a heat pipe enabled one for the 2 on the left right here. And that's actually important because PCI Express Gen 5 drives, especially their controllers, can heat up pretty significantly. And between the 2 M.2 slots under this cooler, I opted for the lower one because it's a 2280 slot. That leaves the upper one, which is expandable to up to, I think, M.2 22110. So in case another SSD is added in the future that might be a bigger one, it can still fit there. And then of course there's this other heatsink enabled M.2 over here if needed, and then there's 2 more Gen 4 ones down there at the bottom. Lots of M.2 expansion on this board, which is cool. So everything's pretty much set up here and ready to install in the case. We got our Dominator Dominator Titanium memory installed as well. It's pretty tall, so it's definitely memory that you'll want to use an all-in-one liquid cooler for. But with all that said, let's go ahead and get this installed in our case. And I'm gonna remove this screw so I can take our side panel off completely to give us a bit more breathing room. And I was under the impression that this top screw removed to allow you to remove the side panel, but actually these 3 screws removes the whole bracket, so 3 at the top and 3 at the bottom, and then we should be able to remove this side panel. Okay, so the top one's fixed, the bottom one can still slide off, so I guess
you could just remove the top one then.
I guess you could remove the top one and then sort of slide it off, but anyway. I've decided to set up our power supply next so we can start routing some of those cables before we get the motherboard in. And here's our RMX shift power supply, the RM1000X, with the connectors on the side, which for a standard case where your power supply is installed down here at the bottom, gives you much easier access, as long as of course you have a little bit of space there to route those. For this case though, we're actually mounting the power supply vertically like this. So we'll still need to make use of a bit of this clearance right here. We have a drive cage up on top. I'm hoping I can leave that in place in case the eventual winner of this build might have some drives they want to install up there. But still, it's going to be easiest to take advantage of these modular connectors to plug everything in before we install it in the case. And I was also noticing these newer Corsair power supplies use these little mini connectors. It's actually the same kind of plug as like a 12VH power or a 12V2x6 connector, but they got it on the PSU side as well. It's most noticeable for like our 24 pin big style, 24 pin on the power supply side, little style. Getting our fan set up now. For some reason, Joe has left this until last. And the nice thing about using these Corsair fans is they have these little connectors. So apply those where you need them, and it's got connection points on both sides. Passive points here for just rigidity and security. They have little biscuit pieces that you wedge in there. And then we connect that up to the corresponding side of our next fan. There's some magnets that will help it stay together as well. And now we have 2 connected, so we can daisy chain these all. And then the benefit from there is we take 1 connector from the end of that and we run it over to our IQ hub. This we will need to connect up to our motherboard and the power and everything. But this can actually control a bunch of devices. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but it's quite a few. And as opposed to taking 3 separate power connectors and 3 separate RGB LED connectors, I'd say this is a step in the right direction for sure. Just you do need to have all matching Corsair fans if you want to connect them to this system. All right, there's number 3, and these are the reverse airflow fans. You can see the pointy part is on the bottom there, so they're going to be pulling air this way, as opposed to most fans where it pulls air that way through the bracket. So these we will install on the bottom, over here. I'll probably use some screws to secure it there as well. All right, look at that. We have almost all of the hardware installed now. With the fans set up, I daisy chained the front 3, actually all 6 of these together to plug into one side of our little control unit here. So all 6 are going to be connected to one side of the IQ Link system hub, and then just the 140 in the back is going to be connected to the other. There's lots of ways to skin this cat, to route them. We could have daisy chained them all up together if we wanted to, but this is the way that I went for. Lastly, before I do some cable management in the back, we need to install our graphics card. Here it is in all its beastly glory. I still, like, it still amazes me just how big this thing is every time I get the chance to take a look at one. But we will remove PCIe bracket protective cover, and we'll gently set it here while I remove our rear PCI Express slot covers. After getting the graphics card installed, the final stages of the build was the cable management part, and this wasn't too difficult for an RGB heavy system like this one, thanks to the reduced amount of cables from the Corsair IQ Link system. I did have to connect those all up to that central hub, and I did sort of rethink how I was wiring things up so there would be fewer cables visible at the front here. I ended up daisy chaining this rear 140 fan along with the 3 120s on the side there, and that allowed me to get everything connected up. After that, I took a break to install Windows, get the BIOS update, get the memory expo settings plugged in properly. And it's at this point where I should point out that yes, this is the fastest computer for gaming that you can build right now, at least in terms of the hardware that's installed, the RTX 4090 and the 9800X 3D. That said, I'm just going to be running these and shipping this system at stock. The true fastest possible gaming PC that you could build right now would use that CPU and this GPU, but they would of course be overclocked and then probably like exotic cooled with liquid nitrogen or something like that. But this is a giveaway build, and that would be a little too complicated for our purposes. For our cooler, we were actually going to go with the Corsair 360mm AIO. That's something that both ASUS and Corsair produce, but again, the stock was limited, so when Joe made his run to Micro Center, the ASUS Ryujin 3 was all that was available, which is a very nice AIO. It is a bit on the expensive side since it's got all the bells and whistles like the LCD screen, but to sort of split the gap between the two, I put the Corsair logo on the ASUS AIO using the ASUS Armory Crate software, and now it'll probably catch some flack from both companies for that unholy crossover between their products. But that said, although there is some crossover between the products that Corsair makes and ASUS makes, when you combine them both in a system like this, it turns out really nice, and I was able to use both company software, ASUS Armory Crate and Corsair IQ, to set up the lighting. Now maybe I've overdosed a little bit on like RGB builds, but I actually found that when I set the lighting on this system to all white, like it looked the nicest. It was kind of clean. It really contrasted the dark finish to generally black for most of the components with the bright white lights. And I also wanted to show off one of the Corsair features that we saw at Computex this year, which is called Time Warp. These new LX series fans are compatible with it. You can't use it along with the murals lighting mode, which is what I'm using right now to provide sort of a contrast in color, and that shows an actual image, and you can take the fans and position them where you want them to be on the image, and then they will light up accordingly. That is a pretty cool feature, but what Time Warp does is it syncs the strobing of the LEDs and the rotation of the fan to make it look like the fan is stopped, even though the fan is actually moving. Like you can go ahead and touch it like, well, the fan stopped, but the fan's actually still spinning. The software only lets you do this with a static color for right now, but it has static where it looks like the fan stopped, and you can also make it look like the fan is slowly rotating like clockwise or counterclockwise. It's a pretty cool effect, and it also kind of dims the lighting down a little bit, so if you want a more subtle bit of lighting in your system, I found that that was pretty aesthetically pleasing. Also for aesthetics, I did add the kickstand on our RTX 4090 since it's a pretty beefy boy. A little bit of support there is helping a lot with the GPU sag, and yes, I did briefly test the system in terms of performance, not just like lighting and stuff like that. I ran 3D Mark Time Spy Extreme, came in with a score of just shy of 19,000 for the graphics, about 7,200 for the CPU. Overall score of just over 15,000, which is right in line with what this hardware should be able to produce. And our temperatures are pretty good too. The CPU during gaming was running at about 62. GPU was only getting up to about 57 or so. In the CPU focus test, the CPU got up to 77, which is perfectly adequate. Meanwhile, the CPU was running at just over 5.2 gigahertz, and the GPU is running about 2,730 megahertz. So I think there's definitely still some overclocking headroom with the CPU and the GPU in this system, if that is something that the eventual winner wants to dabble with. I wish I had a bit more time for testing with this rig, but we got kind of a late start on the build, and we needed to get it up and ready in time for the giveaway to support our Extra Life charity stream, which, by the way, if you weren't already aware, is happening on Saturday, December 14th. We're going to kick off at about 8 a.m. Pacific time, and we're going to have this system up for grabs, as well as a bunch of other cool giveaways. I'm going to be gaming with Kyle, aka Bitwit. You might have heard of him. And if you aren't able to join us, I'm going to kick off this giveaway like right now. So even if you can't join us for the live stream, you can still check the giveaway link in the description down below. All you have to do is visit our Extra Life charity page. You do not have to donate, so if you're not flush with cash right now, I totally understand. Feel free to still enter the giveaway anyway, but if you do have a bit of extra to spare, it is an excellent cause. It's to help support Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Extra Life, and they do a great job for many years running now. Check them out on all the charity review sites if you want to know more. They have a pretty glowing reputation, and that's why we have continued to do our charity streams through them. But that's all I have for this video. Again, the links for all of these products will be down in the video's description. Link to the giveaways down in the description. A huge thank you once again to Corsair and ASUS for helping to support this build, helping to support the giveaway, and of course helping to support our Extra Life charity stream, which we've been doing annually for quite a few years now. Thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you all in the next video.